Higher, further, faster is the new season coming to Marvel Snap, and they just dropped the announcement video showcasing the 4 new cards that are going to be coming to the game in November. So in this video, we're going to go over some star ratings on how I think these cards are going to perform, and let me tell you, there's some underperformers and there's some overperformers, and there's a lot of cards that a lot of people got a lot of opinions on, so I'm excited to break it down for you here today. And then we also got the season pass, which is just right here, 2 new locations, as well as the full spotlight schedule, which is super important, right? Because this economy is savage. It's savage, everybody. It's expensive. So you got to plan ahead and just kind of look at the forecast and say, okay, I'm going to save up for that card. So it's really important to keep that in mind. But let's get to the cards, starting with Miss Marvel, the season pass card. And actually, really quickly, let's look at the season pass because it's pretty fire, right? Because Peach Momoko is the featured artist for this season pass, and that is a fan favorite, a community favorite, one of my favorites. This Captain Marvel goes hard. I love that one. And then the Spectrum's pretty awesome, the Miss Marvel. This is a great set for a season pass, and the card backs are amazing as well. I really like the Spectrum one in particular. So very cool cosmetics. Let's get to the cards, starting with Miss Marvel. All right, Miss Marvel is your season pass card. I'm giving her 4 stars. And look at this variant. This is my favorite variant, but she has a lot of really good ones going for her. I think this is going to be a very good card. I've been pretty high on this card since it's been data mined. It did originally have a different effect, but I like this one just as much. Now, I got to clear some things up because I think there's a little bit of confusion surrounding this card, okay? And of course, snap subscribe because we're going to do a snapper pass very soon, breaking down the mechanics of this card. But to give you a very quick idea, a 4/5 ongoing adjacent locations where your cards have unique costs have +5 power. That means if we meet these conditions and we don't get countered, which there are a lot of counters, that we get net 15 power out of this 4-drop. That's crazy, right? It's kind of reminiscent of Dr. Doom spreading that 5 power across each lane. Well, Miss Marvel's doing that while only costing 4. Now, what are the conditions? Well, unique costs. So that's like a 1 cost, a 2 cost, a 3 cost, a 4 cost, this sort of thing. Death is in her own realm of cost, 8 cost, right? So as long as all of those are unique at its own respective location, you're fine. Now you would probably think, well, what if you play Squirrel Girl? What if you play Dr. Doom? The Doom bots, for instance, have 6 costs. They cost 6 energy each, even if you pull them back to the hand. You never do that, but that's what their actual cost is on the card. Well, you're fine. It's tallying up each respective location. So it's not too bad, right? You're going to play 4 cards, let's say, probably, maybe not even at that location. As long as they all have varying costs, you're going to meet the condition of Miss Marvel. Now, there's another hidden condition that you want to play her in the mid, right? Because if you don't play her in the mid, she's a 4/9 at most. And if it gets countered, you're going down to a 4/5, which isn't terrible, but definitely not why we're running this card. So that is where this actually gets a little bit trickier, because maybe you don't have the ability to play in the mid, and it just doesn't really quite work out. There's also a crazy amount of counters, like people moving your cards, I think is actually really insane. Like Magneto is a crazy counter to this, as well as like debris, throwing over rocks. If you got a 1-drop at a location and a rock goes over there, you're going to be in trouble. All kinds of stuff. The goblins as well. If you got a 3-drop, there's a lot that can go wrong. And I didn't even talk about ongoing counters like Enchantress, Echo, and Rogue. So there's a lot of things that can stop this card from doing what it wants to do. But when it works, this is going to pop off and steal games. I could see a lot of plays like playing Wave on curve to cheat out Onslaught and then play Miss Marvel on the last turn for a big burst, which is why I got Onslaught here as just an amazing synergistic card. And you could throw in Mystique. There's a lot of synergies. There's a lot of counters. There's a lot of synergies. You could put in Mystique, right? Copying Miss Marvel. That's another 5 going to each location. Onslaught kind of doing that same thing, but having power on the body. Orca, Namor, these kind of cards, man, you don't see them all that often. But when they're just chilling by themselves and they get that bonus phantom power, right? That power that doesn't require a card to be there, that Miss Marvel is giving, that Mr. Fantastic gives, that Claw gives, you know? It's going to be really exciting. I could see a lane where you're just playing all those cards in the mid and then you Onslaught on top of it and you just stack all mid, but you get a bunch of power elsewhere. Pretty neat. Another one I've heard is like Living Tribunal, but that doesn't really matter. She's already dispersing the power across the board. I don't think Living Tribunal is going to be that helpful for this card, but the number 1 card that I think is going to help out Miss Marvel is is Cosmo, because we want to prevent that Enchantress, that Rogue, etc. All that things in the mid that could stop us. I think you play Cosmo on 3, you play Miss Marvel on 4, and then you do whatever you got to do on 5 and 6, and you're pretty solid. So I think this is going to be a good card, but not like Loki, not Elsa. We knew Elsa was going to be busted because I got to play test her early, and then Loki's kind of surprised a lot, but he was busted right off the hop. I don't think Miss Marvel is going to be at that caliber, but I think she's going to be a very solid card, a very fun card. So I'm excited about this one. But what else is coming in November? Let's check it out. Next up is Gladiator, a Series 5 release, and I'm giving this card 4 stars. Now, this one's been, talked about quite a bit. And it's already been nerfed, and time after time after time, when a data mine card takes a nerf, it usually, no matter what, is released and is still very, very strong. So that might be the case here. We have a 3/7. On reveal, add a card from your opponent's deck to their side of this location. If it has less power, destroy it. Now, it used to be a 3/8, and that was the nerf. It went to a 3/7, which is huge for a card with this ability. But I would argue this when it comes to Gladiator. Forget about the ability. This is a 3/7 card with, if we incorporate the ability, a potential upside, right? You destroy something, you're happy about it, but it doesn't really matter. You're playing the card because it's a 3/7. You look at Maximus, right? Maximus is played a lot, but I would argue that that ability is worse. You guaranteed to let your opponent draw 2 cards, unless with both cards we use strategies like Cosmo or Zero or something like that. But if we just straight up play those cards and we allow whatever happens to our opponent, we risk giving them more options. Now, Maximus could be better on turn 6, and that I will concede, right? We might pull out a card on turn 6, plating Gladiator on turn 6, that could win the game for our opponent. A card they would never have drawn, that was not ever supposed to be a part of the game, and we whiffed. We pulled out something, I don't even know, like a Hulk or something, and Gladiator goes, oh, sorry, I just gave the opponent 12 power, and I've only got 7. So that could happen, and that could suck. That's why I'm only giving this 4 stars. But I think in most case scenarios, you play this on curve as a 3/7, you're just happy. The stats carry this card. We don't actually care about the ability. And we're happy if the ability works out, because this would easily make somebody concede right away. But it's just like Yondu. It's one of those things where you lose your best card, your synergistic card, it's just pure RNG. And you're just like, oh, whatever, that was dumb. Why did it snipe my Iron Man? Why did it snipe my Darkhawk or whatever? And something that I want to learn more about this card is if it's actually going to destroy an ongoing card. Is the ongoing ability going to read and it gets the plus power? Because that could really hinder this card's performance as well. But I think no matter what, when I look at this, I see a 3/7. It's going to be good. I'm done sleeping on cards that have good stat lines. They always find a way in Marvel Snap to be relevant. We look at synergies with like Silver Surfer, amazing. Put him in a Surfer deck with Maximus. Just like the power is insane. Then you got Shang-Chi to cover your bases, right? You pull out something that you know had a little bit too much power that you couldn't handle with Gladiator. Well, you Shang-Chi it in the face and you're good to go. You move on. Then you got Cosmo if you want to deny the on reveal, and Cosmo also works in a Silver Surfer list if we want to go that route. So I like the upside of this card, but I also could see a few mechanical issues with it that might make it a little bit worse. It was so good at a 3/8. I think it was amazing. Like 3/8, that's a godlike stat line. That's insane. You can't deny that kind of stat line, and especially the combination with Shang-Chi to cover your bases even more, and even more targets to destroy, because it is less than, right? As Gladiator is right now, he's going to destroy anything with 6 or less power. Before it used to be 7 or less. I don't know if that's huge difference maker, but it's something. Every bit of power on a card like this matters a lot more than it does to most other cards that rely on their ability. So there you go. That's Gladiator. Let me know what you think about him in the comments below. Let's get to the next one. Next up is ANNIHILUS, a Series 5 release. So he's going to cost 6,000 tokens, and he is a 5/7 who has also been nerfed. Used to be a 5/8 on the original data mine and took a nerf. So I'm not sleeping on ANNIHILUS, but at the same time, I can't for the life of me give this more than 3 stars. So ANNIHILUS, a 5/7 on reveal, your cards with 0 or less power switch sides, destroy those that can't. My argument here is that they nerf this card because they don't want it to be popular. They want to be wary of the junk decks because they create a negative experience for the player that's on the receiving end, because you can't play your cards. You got board clustered and you can't do anything about it. And that's what Annihilus is basically looking to do: establish checkmate on turn 5 if the conditions have been met. Those conditions being, have I played Sentry? Have I played Debris? Is Hood on the board? Do I have anything else that I can make 0 or less power, flip it to the other side so my opponent cannot do anything on turn 6, which will happen. That is nasty, right? Imagine playing Debris. You put 2 rocks out on the board, and then with Annihilus, you can push another 2 over to the other side. That's 4 spaces in a game where there's a total of 12 available spaces. You play the Hood, you get the demon back to your hand. You can reliably play the demon and know that you're going to send the Hood over. And of course, Sentry, man, a -10 void. Now, the nice saving grace with this as well is that even if there is an available space on the other side, these things will get destroyed, which is great, right? You whiff on your Green Goblin or something like that, you don't have to worry about it because you'll destroy it later. Annihilus will get rid of it, which is pretty sweet. It can also be a very surprising amount of power, because maybe you play Annihilus on turn 6 and your opponent thinks they have those locations in the bag because you got a void there or whatever else. Then you destroy it, and that's like a 17 power swing at the right location with Annihilus Sentry combo. So that could really catch people off guard. And another thing that people keep telling me, like I don't know, yeah, this is good tech against Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, but I'm not too worried about those. They're not played that much, and even if they are, you're not picking this up to tech against 2 out of 250 cards in Marvel Snap, right? But the idea is there. It is possible, and it will happen. It will certainly happen. It's a good combination. If it happens, you've seen like Odin trying to trigger those goblins back. Well, Annihilus is a good option as well. But I think you're pretty much running this just in junk decks. And here's the problem. Here's why I'm having a hard time giving them a higher star rating, is that there's not many cards with 0 or less power that you actually want to dish over. Unless we use Hazmat to make a bunch of 1 power stuff have less. But that seems like a lot of work just to send things over and, cluster the board on the other side. So that's where I get a little bit nervous. But the 3 cards right there are fantastic combinations. They are all cards that you can play before Annihilus and on curve without needing any energy cheat. So the dream is really just playing all of those, and on turn 2, I don't even know, you got an available turn 2. So that's amazing. It looks like a lot of fun. Let me tell you this as well. Out of all the Marvel Snap games that I play, junk decks are probably the most. It's the most fun that I have with this game. Man-Thing is probably my favorite release of October. I love that archetype. I'm picking up Annihilus. I'm stoked for it. But that doesn't mean that I can't give it a bad rating or a middle rating, right? Just because I'm excited and I'm going to have fun with the card and I'm going to pick it up doesn't mean the rating has to be super high. I still don't think it's going to be, a meta breaker. I really don't. But some people do, and fair play. Fair play. I hope it is. It looks like a really fun card. The variants are amazing. I'm excited. I can't wait for Annihilus. He's coming out on the 3rd week of November, and I'm going to pick him up right away. And I might even get the Spotlight variant, which is the Annihilation variant, if you see it cycling up here, which looks so fresh. Let's go. But let's talk about Martyr, man. So a 1/4 also was changed. And I don't even know if it was a nerf or a buff, up for debate. I think it was a nerf, to be honest, because she used to be a 2/6. I liked her a lot when she was a 2/6. I thought the potential of using Sarah to make her a 1/6, you could play with Hitmonkey, avoiding Killmonger, these sorts of things seemed really good. And now she's a 1/4, totally vulnerable to Killmonger. Yes, there is a card coming in January that is going to help out, but that is not for a few months, so we're not going to talk about it. But the other synergies here, and of course, what does it do? I skip over her ability because I just don't care about it. At the end of the game, move to a location that loses you the game if possible. It's the reverse of Captain Marvel. But I don't feel like you ever end up in a situation where that could happen, or at least you do your best to avoid that situation. Not that it won't happen, but you avoid it at all costs. You build your deck accordingly so that this card just can't move. She doesn't have the option to move. You play her in a zoo list, right? With Khazar and Blue Marvel and a bunch of like Squirrel Girl and whatever. You cluster the board up so that this has nowhere to go. Same with Ultron. You fill the board up, she got nowhere to go. She's just a good stat line. So you could use her with Khazar, Ultron, Patriot, this sort of thing. She doesn't get Patriot buffs, but usually he's running that deck, right? And maybe it works out, but it's just not that exciting. Because you know what? There's another card called Hawkeye who never gets played. He gets +3 power if you play a card at his location on the following turn. Not very difficult to meet. Very easy condition. He hardly ever sees play. It's just a normal on reveal. So if there's cards that already can get to 1/4 stat lines, like Nebula, you look at Nebula. Why are you ever playing Martyr over Nebula? Nebula gets to 5 power easy. And yeah, I just don't know. This seems like trash to me. When she was first switched to a 1/4, I thought maybe there'd be potential. Maybe we could buff her up. But now when I just look at it, I can't get excited about this card. I see why they're making her Series 4 and only costing 3,000 tokens, because just not a lot of people are probably going to pick her up. And I don't even know at Series 4 is this card worth picking up, because you are not building a deck around it. You're tossing it into a few decks, hoping that it gives those dividends, but maybe it just doesn't even end up being the game changer that you want it to be. But again, like I said with Gladiator, this is a 1/4 stat line, and I don't want to sleep on stat lines too much. So that's why I'm giving her 2 stars instead of 1, because if there's a way, then maybe there's a way. And January, when that certain card comes out, I'm trying to avoid some spoilers here for those who don't watch data mine videos, well, then maybe it pops off and it does pretty well. But until then, I just don't know if Martyr's got what it takes to make the cut in a lot of lists. All right, and then the 2 locations that are going to be dropping into Marvel Snap is the Nor Dimension. After you play a card here, add a Djinn to your hand. A Djinn is a 0/1. On reveal, next turn you get +2 energy. That's crazy, dude. That's a lot of energy. Kind of like Altar of Death, but you have to put something in your hand, so you have to have available space. And then you got to play it, but it's free, so that's not too bad. But it does take up a board space, but you get 1 power, and then you get bonus energy. I don't know. Seems really good in Destroy, if I'm being totally honest, because you just destroy a bunch of these Djinns for free, buff up your Carnage and whatever, and get a bunch of ramp. So that might take off. I don't know. Don't necessarily love that one. Seems like a bit much. I wish it was like a 1-turn effect, you know, similar to some of the ones we've seen, like Hotel Inferno. Then we got Tarnax 4. After you play a card here, transform it into another card of the same cost. That's wacky. That is wacky. Let me tell you, the first card that comes to mind that is probably the best is either Dr. Doom or Arnim Zola. Those seem nuts, right? You play Dr. Doom there, you get another 6 drop. You still get the Doom bots out. And then if you play Arnim Zola there, let's say it was like a Black Panther that you hit, you copy the Black Panthers to 2 different locations, and then the Arnim Zola actually turns into something possibly worthwhile. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential. That's probably going to pop off, and it's going to create some wacky scenarios. But I really hope that that one is super rare, because it's going to change the game in such an RNG matter that it's going to be really frustrating a lot of the time. It gives me X-Mansion vibes a little bit, so not necessarily loving the locations that we got to work with in November. And there is the November Spotlight schedule. So it starts off with MS.MARVEL on the first-ish week of November. It's a little bit late, kind of. And then you got Alioth Null, Negasonic, 2 cards that have been recently changed, especially Negasonic recently. Kind of neat, but also I think people are tired of seeing Null in the Spotlight caches. So then you've got Gladiator with Mirage and Loki. So if you didn't pick up Loki in September, this is a good opportunity. Still the top deck in Marvel Snap, and Mirage is a very, very good card, especially paired with Loki. Then Annihilus this week, you got Dakin and X23. It looks like both Ryan Gonzalez variants, which look pretty neat. I especially like the Dakin. But that is all right. I don't know how good that one is, honestly, but I'm probably gunning for that variant. Let's go. And then the Martyr week is last, and you got Jean Grey, Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Man 29. And actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, both those cards are kind of junk. They're not that great. And then Martyr's not that great. So that is just like super underwhelming week, I think. But hey, maybe people will like Martyr, and maybe she'll change, and maybe I'll grow to like her if I learn a little bit more about her mechanics, which I'll always cover in my Snapper Pass videos. I always do my best to ask the devs a bunch of questions and get those details that you guys need, that information that you need to make those purchasing decisions. Anyways, that's going to do it for me, everyone. Enjoy the November season that's going to be starting very shortly. I'm very hyped for it. The Marvels, the theme, the card backs, the cosmetics, it's all fantastic. Looks great. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.